So just before we start, anybody here write JavaScript? Use JavaScript? What do you use to edit it? What? Orion? You're the man. Okay, so I'll start now. My name is Moffat. I was on the platform for a decade and a couple of years. And just last year, I switched from the platform to Orion. And it was a shock, because I'm used to Eclipse. So, you know, my first job was to fix the splitter. They threw me a low ball, my first JavaScript ever. And I came into here, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. It's a brand new code base. I'm hitting F3. I'm trying to hover. I'm doing things. Nothing is happening. There was no tooling. We showed you a little bit of syntax, warnings and errors, and a little hover that told you what they were. But that was it for the tooling. We had nothing. So what do I mean by tooling? Like everybody here who uses Eclipse sort of knows what tooling is, right? Tooling is, you can do, you know, it's stuff that helps you get your job done. The only reason that I could work on the platform, I started working the platform the year after I started using JavaScript. And the only way I could do that was because the tooling was so good that I didn't have to know the particulars. So you get your normal content assist, you get the easy stuff, which is warnings and errors and parsing and syntax coloring. Then you get some assists in browsing, F3, and being able to navigate around in an unknown environment. You get content assist. Basically, these are all things that one way or the other help you get your job done without getting in the way. The best tooling is tooling that really understands what you're trying to do and leverages what you're trying to do to help you get there. So it prunes out things that you don't need in favor of things that you need at the moment. And we have a particular problem in my world, which is people mix HTML, CSS, JavaScript all in one file. It's a fairly common coding way for people that are writing fairly straightforward applications. So the short form is, it helps you, it's context aware, it's at your fingertips. This is one of our mainstays, one of the design philosophies, is to make sure that what you want to do is there. You don't have to go hunting for it. It's where you need it, when you need it. And it doesn't get in your way. We can't interrupt your workflow, because otherwise it's not good tooling. If you have to fight with it so hard that by the time you get where you're going, you forgot what you were doing, it's useless. And because I'm a mouse user, and most of the guys that I work with are keyboard users, we make sure that we support both ways of working, because there are people that, there's a definite split. I'd like to know what the percentage is. But certain people live with one hand on the mouse, and certain people say, if I have to take my hands off the keyboard, you're broke. The current state of the art, most people who do JavaScript use something like brackets or Sublime Text or VI or some other non-IDE-ish editor. Brackets does a good job. They all do a reasonably good job, but they do a reasonably good job. They're very quick. They all support multiple panes. We'll get into that. But they're not deep. They don't actually dig deeply into the source that you're looking at, looking for ways to help you. So, for example, you get refactoring in certain tools only works on the files you have open. Well, if I had to know what files I needed to change, I could have gone and made the change myself. So that's sort of it's okay, but it's not really that effective. So what we're trying to do with Orion is make the tooling good enough to start attracting people away from the editors. And the only way to do that is to make the tooling so good that people see an advantage to paying the cost to move away from using brackets or Sublime Text. People from VI should be easy. Now, when I first started, I had an argument because they're saying, why bother? The reason that these guys haven't tooled up JavaScript before is because it's too hard. You can't do it. It's impossible. Why don't you do TypeScript? And my answer was, well, if I was going to do TypeScript, I'd be helping out 5% of our clients because they're the people that use TypeScript. So to me, that's not a good approach. I'd rather do 80% of the tooling for 95% of the people than 100% of the tooling for 5% of the people. You get a lot more bang for your buck that way. So for anybody that doesn't know JavaScript, JavaScript is completely untyped. You can do really funky things with it. It's amazing. But you can do things that you can't possibly follow with any code analysis because they're runtime decisions. If you have a method that returns one of two other methods, then if you assign that return value somewhere outside of it in another file, there is no way for you to figure out what the type is going to be at development time because it's a runtime decision, which one of the two you get back. So that problem will always be there. And we're getting help from tools like Esprima and tern especially. Tern's an analysis engine. What it does is it takes ASTs, but it knows how to follow chains, and it knows how to build up a little database of what you have. So it actually goes over it needs an external AST parser, but then it takes these guys, parses them all, and builds a small database, and then it can answer questions like, find me a reference, find me a declaration, and you can extend it. I'll show you some of the extensions that we've done. This is stuff that we've added to tern. So Java's sort of like this. Java's a very coordinated modular structure, sort of unbreakable in the sense you can mask things as well. I mean, you can certainly write stuff in Java that says return object, and then you lose all your typing information. But that's, at least for well-constructed things, the typing information is maintained as long as you can. This is JavaScript. You can't tell where anything comes from. You can't tell where anything goes to. And more importantly, I like the lines that go across it because you start out, even in JavaScript, you can have a nice modular program, and then after a year of bug fixes, what happens is, my favorite metaphor is, I have a piece of data over here, but I need it to be over here. So what I do is I find some common object between these two guys and add it as a field here. And then I use it as a field over here. And I call that sticking a suction cup on a train. The train's going by, you know it's going to the right place. But the suction cup has nothing to do with the train. You used to have a nice data structure that was all related. Now you get this extra field that has nothing to do with what it was intended for. But it's a very common practice. Not a good one, but a common one. So that just gives you an idea of the problems that we have. I mean, it is impossible, right? So what do? Well, first thing we do is not try and tool it up ourselves without help. Tern is a supported project. It's open source. It's been under development for a number of years, so it's fairly complete. We're pushing it along because we're trying to do it. We're trying to make things go deeper than what they usually do. So we're actually providing tern extensions for various things. Now, it literally is impossible. So what we have to do is not lie. We can't tell you that we have perfect tooling. This will never be JDT. We'll never, ever tell you that. So we have to own the problem. We have to own the fact that sometimes we can't be sure. We can guess, but when we guess, we have to tell people. Tern also supports many other things, like you can preload a bunch of descriptions of various libraries and things, so that you can get content assist and you can get JS docs. And that's really useful for Node. So we've already taken 10 or 15 of the, or more, we're adding more all the time, of the more popular Node libraries, and producing references for them that you get for free. So the first level of tooling is your infile tooling. This is sort of like, this is an extension of what we had before. We're not looking any deeper than the file that you're on, but we can provide tooling there that is just useful. Everybody that uses Eclipse will know most of the things that we're trying to do here. Syntax coloring, errors and warnings. Informational hovers, it's interesting. The thing that I did on this, there's two guys in Winnipeg that actually wrote all this code. They're the Tern experts. Mike Curtis and, or Mike Rennie and Curtis Wendet. What I did was write the core tooling, which was a generic hover service, so that you can register, and then anytime the cursor stops, it'll ask you if you have anything to show, and you can return variously formatted return values to produce hovers. And that's how we provide all of our tooling. So the in-file tooling looks like this. So when I first started, I came in, I would try and hover over split thumb, nada. But now we have many, many different types of just hovers. And if I switch over to here, now I'm in an HTML file. But the types of hovering that we can do are not just, you know, they're not simply for JavaScript. It's JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. So this is what I call a bad day. You can imagine that I wrote this file on Monday after leaving the bar and going upstairs. And basically, I wasn't in that good shape. So I wrote stuff with a whole bunch of errors in it. So there's a quick fix. As an example of the fact that you can do all these things with the mouse, we'll put the mouse up there and hit F2. So basically, I can do a lot of the quick fixes here. Just by hovering over the guy. Of course, it's a demo, so. But anyway, this is just demonstrating that we have a variety of quick fixes. There's many, many, many more than this, right, that I could show. But quick fixes are quick fixes, and frankly, I can't keep up with these guys. They actually produce more and more and more on a regular basis because we're digging deeper and deeper and deeper into things. So that's the quick fix part. We also have things like import hovers. So I can come up here and navigate to another file just by hovering on it. That works there. And if you notice that I can use Alt back arrow to go back. When we do things that change where you are, we take definite steps to try and maintain your context. This is a part of not breaking your flow. So if you go and find something, then you should be able to get back exactly to where you started from without having to do anything complicated. So that's the basics. That's the three types of things that we do. They're all running from an HTML file. So people who are doing that flow work, we use require.js. We also do require imports. So here, if I come down here, util.js. And I just did a find reference. Basically, I should have done that later. Hold on a sec. So anyways, that's the basics. That's the easiest form of tooling. It doesn't require you to know anything other than the file that you're looking at. The navigation tooling is a bit different. Navigation tooling is specifically meant to move you from one place to another place. So, open declaration, search results. Search results are interesting in that we can do a search on something. This is fairly common. And we have a nice search display that can bring you around from place to place. So that's okay, but it's again, it's sort of bland. It doesn't rely on anything except what the text string is and a search crawler. The more interesting ones are, okay, so here's one of our test snippets. This is a file that we use to test our own code as a part of the test framework. There's automatic versions of all the tests we can do through here, but we can do a number of them by hand just to make sure that they work. So if I'm in here and I want to see where did this come from, sorry, open declaration. I hate demos. One second. So open declaration has brought me to a new file. It said, oh, I got that guy because one of the guys that I included, that I required, this one, exported that function to me. So when I'm using it here, it knows where it came from. But that's less. So we go to open declaration, we're here, but oh look, we're not finished yet because that one actually came from something else that I required that I re-exported. So now we've gotten all the way from one file to another file to a third file. But it was sort of clunky. So again, I can do Alt back arrow to get exactly back where I was. Now I'll do something a little bit deeper. I'll open the implementation. And opening the implementation is a recursive walk. It walks and finds the declaration, and then it sees if that's the actual implementation. And if it's not, it keeps looking in the parse tree. It moves over to the other side. Oh, I'm part of a member. What's my member value? It's this guy. Oh, that's an object expression, so it's the last element in the object. So it actually does that walk and effectively does what I just did by hand. But it works from as many levels deep as you need to go. If somebody had re-exported this from somewhere else, it would go there. And it also works here. So if I go to ISOS, I have a key binding. If there's key bindings for most of these, I'm using the menu just so that you know where the context menu by itself was something that wasn't there when I started. There was no context menu at all on the editor. And it's of course it's the OS, it's the standard key binding. I.e., we try and maintain the Eclipse key bindings as much as we can. So F3. So that's just to show that it works from a variety of different places. So that's the That's level 2. So now we're talking about not just looking at the code that you have, we're looking at all the code that you require, and we're looking at the code that it requires. And build up effectively a requirements tree that tern then takes the information from and crawls these references out of. So now we get to the real crux. This is the thing that everybody said is impossible, because it is. But at the same time, if we don't lie to people, I think there's a large difference between doing what people used to do, which is they do a global search, and then they go through the search results and go, oh yeah, that one, and fix it, right? But you have no other contextual information. You don't know. It's just a text search. So we need something better. So we're basically providing as much support as we can. And I think going forwards, what we're looking at is, over time, we'll pull on the thread, and we'll pull on the thread. There'll be more quick fixes. We'll have more hovers for information. As an example of something I'd like to see is I'd like to be able to hover over a CSS class, the actual CSS class type, and get an aggregate that doesn't just show me blue, but if it was blue and it had some font definitions and the font color and the font size, it would show me an aggregate that says your div will look sort of like this, right? So you can hover over one of these guys, but as we pull on the thread some more, when you hover over demo body, it should do the same thing, except at a higher level. And these hovers are extremely flexible. We've had hovers that, for demos, that literally put an iframe up and loaded the W3 tools for, you'd hover over this guy and you would actually get the W3 web page for this particular attribute. Unfortunately, it doesn't fit in a tooltip the size that we really want to have. So, and the other thing that we can do is some of these anti-patterns that I was talking about, where you have somebody is using a particularly obtuse piece of JavaScript that's doing something weird that's breaking our tooling. If we have a workaround for them, we can provide a quick fix that says, hey, if you fix this, you'll maintain the tooling state. You won't lose the tooling state at this point on your variable. And that'll have to come over time as we get more people who say, oh, I have this code and this isn't working. And then if we can identify some common anti-patterns, then we have a chance again to move the tooling a bit forward. It's very much like, TypeScript is sort of like, if you add a bunch of typing annotations onto your things, then we can do a better job. But then it puts the work back onto the client again, that he has to go and micromanage all of his stuff just to make the tooling work. And some of these other editor types allow you to do that themselves. You say you can manually make a reference between two files, but you have to do it yourself. You have to actually work on it. So basically, the pièce de résistance, just to prove that we're trying to handle all the different coding patterns. So there's many different coding patterns that people use in JavaScript. There's require.js, there's Node programming, there's things like this. So the other stuff I was showing you was in Node, or this is a Node app, and you'll notice that the quick fix knows that it's Node. So it actually puts the ESLint directive in and says, okay, now these are okay, the imports. And yes, we can do the same thing, except with Node guys, which use a completely different require type. So we can walk, and we will probably add more and more to those. That's another piece of string that we can pull on and make the tooling better and better. So okay, so basically, so this is the refactor setup. So what you get originally is you get just the list of things, but it's interesting to look. We have function declarations, function calls, variable declarations, variable access. So we categorize all these things, even down to things like string. So if I actually want to do a replacement here, if I want to do a refactor, so I can use this just to look at it and see who's using me. But it's a find replace mechanism, so if I want to refactor all managers to developers, if I hit preview replacement, it does a very good job. It comes up and it shows you compare editors, showing you what's actually going to happen in that file for the changes if you hit the refactor button. And you'll notice we have the checkboxes here. Because, again, this is the part of the guessing thing. You still have to know. So things with check marks, things that are green check marks, Tern has told us with 100%, it's not guessing. This is an actual instance of the thing that you're refactoring. It's not just some piece. Now, interestingly enough, when we come down to the strings down here, oh, we're not sure. And if you look at it, okay, describe manager. Manager is a type used in this case, so we probably want that one. But these two requires, I'm not changing the name of the file. So we don't want these two guys, because that would break the imports. And then when you do the refactoring, everybody's a developer. These are the files that have changed. You get the standard Git support, so you can come here. If you want to check after the fact, you can come here and see what it actually did. So you'll notice that there's a So it did an awful lot of refactoring across multiple files. And to my knowledge, we're the first people to actually try and do that without having to have you do a bunch of work up front to make it happen. Okay, so that's where we're at. That stuff wasn't there last week, and it changed between the time I came here and when I just showed it to you. We used to show percentages of inaccuracy if we knew it. I think somebody decided correctly that people don't care whether it's 82% or 75%. If it's not 100%, then I have to look at it anyway. So where do we go? We now have much better, so we're getting to the point where we really do have a good feel for the types of the things that you're having, so we can carry more and more and more information. We're helping again with tern. We're going to produce our own version of a tern file that lets us optimize various things, like making sure that certain libraries are pre-parsed. Wider means envelop more of the conventional styles of programming, because there's a variety of different ways that people can define type defs. So there's people that try and do typing in JavaScript, but there's more than one of them, of course. So we'll have more and more of those that we understand. More tooling for CSS, like I was saying. I'd love to be able to hover over the guy and get a div that shows me everything that's in that. My personal favorite, though, is the one that I wanted to have when we started. When we started this exercise, I wanted to be able to hover over this guy and have it bring up a tooltip that shows me that CSS. And, you know, we're not there yet. This doesn't work, but this does, and this does, and this does. So it knows that it's a UML element. So now all of a sudden we can write some code that says, oh, okay, well, because of this, we know that this is indeed a class list. So that must be a class name. And then we do a global search, in the CSS and find the right class name. And then we strip out the code and put it up in a hover. Again, a design philosophy that we have is that nothing that we do can slow the editor down. If the editor itself becomes non-performant, it's useless. So we're exploring a variety of things. Tern already works in a working thread. We're trying to, nothing we've done so far really affects the performance, but it's something that we have to keep in mind going forward, because if we try and do too much stuff on the same thread as the UI, we're going to start impacting the editor performance. And that's one of the things that we realize, that it's just a non-starter. If we start down that road, we'll be in trouble. The road ahead. Everybody in Eclipse knows quick access. I use it all the time. Orion could really use one of those guys. So you can execute commands and whatnot without, I find it terribly convenient myself. Live picture-in-picture, I put this in, I didn't tell John, but I put this in because I actually think it's a reasonably good idea. Hey John, where's my split editor? Okay, what we have is, we have split editors, and we have a form of split editor that comes up as a square that lays on top of where you're at. And over time, we'd like to make that live, which is to say, rather than hovers are meant to be temporary things. What we want is something a little more permanent. So you can imagine a picture-in-picture that you can configure to say, oh, if I'm over one of the following types of things, show me this information. So you can configure that guy, let's say, if you're over the CSS class, to show you the CSS class in the picture-in-picture. So it's editable, and you can do things with it. And you can also envision that if you did the inverse, we could tool it up, where if you were in the CSS and you hover and you put it there, the picture-in-picture might show you the files that are using that CSS class. So it's a way to bring more information into your context. How configurable is, how effectively it'll work in the end, we're not sure, which is why we're still working on it. We haven't been pushing the split editors for the same reason. We want the split editors to not just be something that you manipulate, but something that we can help you with. So you can have, you should be able to define areas to say, oh, if I'm in this file, show me my CSS files over here, show me the HTML over here. So that we're trying to make the user interfaces as active as possible in helping you have the things that you want to know about there. Better template support, more node libraries, more other people's libraries. Export for templates. Templates is something that we sort of, we haven't done as good a job as we should have. It's one of the things that the editor guys do a very good job with. These guys live because they have good content assist with good templates. And one of our feedback exercises was quite obvious. The guy came back and said, I make a new HTML file, I hit Control Space, and I don't get a template that fills a standard HTML page in for me. Accessibility support is an interesting thing. Accessibility support is sort of because I work for IBM. And accessibility is becoming more and more and more important. The government used to just rubber stamp it, but now they're actually getting really serious. So we have to make sure that Orion, because it's used in IBM products, is accessible. But more to the point, we want to make sure that the people who are using it to build products have the same capability to make their products accessible, because they're going to need to anyways. So we tend to support it in the tooling. So there's an ARIA label, for example, that you can attach onto various elements. And that lets screen readers tell you what element has to focus. So ordinarily you can do it a reference if you have a label and a thing, but if you don't, you can actually put it right in the right in the specification for your element. So we would tool that up. If you don't have one, you get a warning that says, probably a quick fix, ARIA label. You should supply an ARIA label for this if you want to be accessible. And you can't read the bottom of the slide. It's funny because you don't know what size. At the last room I was in, it was a 4x3. Now it's a landscape. That last one says, we're members of the Eclipse community. Right? So we know that at the end of the day, all the stuff that we're doing in Orion, we would love to take out and contribute back to WTP or JSDT to make their tooling better too. And we're already working on that. The guys in Winnipeg tell me that that's not hard. There's a tern.java, and it can read the same tooling from our JavaScript and execute it. So it's just a matter of getting a hold of the people on the various projects, coming up with an integration strategy, and then going from there, right? Hopefully we can get some life back in JSDT with this, because people have tried to use it. But as far as I know, we're already almost at the edge of what most editors just quit at, and we're just starting. This is probably 9 months worth of work. I think next year I'll be able to come back and give a presentation that'll actually be very impressive. So, any questions?
What are your thoughts on other programming languages like Java? Can these kind of editors, online editing, building?
Oh,
Is that an option?
Depending on the depth of what you're talking about, we already support about 40 languages through content types. That means you get text styling, you get some parsing, some warnings errors, but none of the deep stuff. We haven't actually tooled them up yet. So we support a lot of content types, but not nearly as deeply as we're targeting JS first because it's the toughest. And it's, JS and CSS and HTML5 are going nowhere, and they'll be used in almost everything. We keep very good metrics on what file types get opened and things like that. It's funny when we look at the metrics coming in, one of the advantages to working with Bluemix is because we have corporate customers and they open files that we never even heard of. Smarty. Don't even know what it is. But I know that Grant Gade is actually doing the parsing, at least the code coloring bits of it as we speak, because we know that a lot of people are using it. We're not even sure who they are, but it's a popular file type. So what that means is at least we have enough metrics to be able to target where, get most bang for your buck by targeting the things that the most people are using. Not the things that we think that most people are using. Right? If you have a large enough sample base, you can actually get a good feel for the language distributions. Anybody else?
Related question. Does it mean that you want to implement something like Node.js in the future for Java?
I don't know why we would. I mean, I've never thought of it. I think the JDT does a pretty good job right now. Yeah, so I would never try and re-implement that myself. It would seem like the not invented here syndrome. Just because we have an editor and it doesn't have Java doesn't mean that we rewrite. There are people that are building on top of where they actually run JDT in the background. Flux does this. They run JDT in the background, and they do all the errors and annotations, and their tooling support help is actually a communication between the Eclipse running on the server and their screen display. And it works reasonably well. But I can't picture us doing that. I can picture us, for example, taking TypeScript and doing, Java's a done deal, as far as I can tell. People that are writing Java code, unless they have a requirement to write it on the web, would be better off to get Eclipse and use it. The tooling is that much better, and hundreds of man years of effort have gone into that tooling. So I don't have hundreds of years. And we don't have 100 people that have a year. So all in all, that's going to be hard. So again, it's resource limited, but we have a good start, and I think we can pull on this thread for quite a little while before we actually find the boundaries of where we can't tool anymore. And that's really sort of the adventure. We're just trying to get this thing. How far can we take this? And we've convinced enough people that we can take it far enough that it's valuable to the users, and that's really the key, right? Tooling is all about trying to help your users out, and the more you can use them, the better. And ultimately, it's trying to gain some market share for Orion. But as a personal person, I'm working on Orion. I want the tooling to work well. I couldn't stand the fact when I first came into it that it gave me no help at all. Because, let's face it, I was addicted to Eclipse. You know. So I'm trying to, we'll never get there, but I think we can get far enough along that it will prove itself as being of great value. Sorry, but oh, Che, oui. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's. I did a talk yesterday. We take the. We take just the. We take just the editor window, just that guy, and we take the JavaScript, CSS, and HTML plugins, and this happens every night. We take them out, and we repackage them. We do a build that's called code edit, that we wrap a fake Orion around because it doesn't have a file system. So basically, we take the editor bits out, and we wrap them in something that makes it live, even though it's not really in Orion anymore. And we offer that as something you can install on your server and create editor pages that have all of that tooling in it on your own web pages. Like Jay.
Just a question about this code edit. We use also IntelligiBuild the same. So do you plan soon to make it extendable in means that I don't need to put my description of the API for the code completion, for instance, in the code base of Orion to review?
Yes, I mean, the honest answer is code edit is actually becoming very popular. It's scary. Code edit almost has more adoption than Orion does in those terms. There are many, there's about 7 or 8 different companies now that are looking at using it or using it. Xtext, we're trying to buy them back because they had some problems. So, but they're into general mechanisms so that they actually have they support 3 different editors. Ace and Orion is one of them. But it's like our candy to children, you know. If we can get more people to start showing the Orion editor in various places, we'll induce more people to believe that you can use it for your general development purposes. And yes, one of the things that we're very clear on, Lebing and I will be working with you. You've talked to Lebing, have you? Yeah, so we actually do focus on this, trying to get it better. Sir, was that your hand or no? Okay. So I think that's about it. So like they tell all of us to do, please review this talk. It's the type of thing that makes the conference better. If people don't review the talk, good or bad, it doesn't matter. The more feedback they get, they actually use this feedback for a lot of things, choosing room sizes and things like that. So, okay, thank you very much.